Right now, you are the only kind of human on the planet. That feels normal. It feels obvious. It feels like it couldn't have been any other way. But it wasn't always like this. 50,000 years ago, if you could walk across the earth, you would have found other humans. Not animals, not ancestors, humans, different ones, some shorter and built like tanks, some adapted to environments so extreme they would kill you in days, some so strange that when scientists first found their bones, they assumed it was a mistake. We were not the only experiment. We were just the last one still running. And the question that should genuinely unsettle you is this: why us? Why not them? Because the honest answer is, we still don't fully know. For most of human history, being human was not one thing. Evolution didn't make us once and stop. It kept trying, different bodies, different brains, different solutions to the same brutal problem of staying alive on a dangerous, unstable planet. At various points in history, multiple human species existed at the same time. Some overlapped with each other for thousands of years. Some may have encountered each other directly. Some interbred. Some disappeared before we ever arrived. One by one, every branch of the human family went extinct, and we are the only reason any of them are remembered at all. That's either humbling or terrifying, depending on how long you think about it. Let's go through them, because each one died differently, and each one teaches us something about why we're still here, and how easily we might not have been. Homo erectus, the one who lasted longest. If survival is the measure of success, Homo erectus wins. They appeared roughly 2 million years ago. They had long legs, shorter arms, and bodies built for covering ground across open landscape. They were among the first humans to leave Africa, spreading into Asia and surviving across vast distances on multiple continents. Their brains were smaller than ours. Their faces were flatter, with heavy brow ridges and low skulls. But they made tools. They hunted. They adapted to environments ranging from tropical forests to cold northern steppes. They did this for over 1 million years. Let that number sit for a second. 1 million years. Homo sapiens has existed for roughly 300,000. We are not even close to the record. And yet the last known Homo erectus fossils come from an island in Indonesia. Current dating places them around 100,000 years ago. After surviving longer than almost any other human species, they vanished. We don't know exactly why. Populations may have become isolated, environments shifted, new competitors arrived. The specific combination of pressures that ended them is still debated. But here is the lesson Homo erectus leaves behind. Lasting a long time is not the same as lasting forever. 1 million years of survival did not protect them from whatever finally came. And if it didn't protect them, it won't automatically protect us either. Neanderthals, the ones people think they know. For decades, Neanderthals were the shorthand for primitive. The image was always the same: hunched, grunting, barely human, dragging knuckles through a cave while the smarter species passed them by. That image is wrong, and it was always wrong. Neanderthals were not failed humans. They were a different answer to the same question. How do you survive an ice age? Their bodies were built for cold, shorter, stockier, with wide chests and thick bones that held heat and absorbed impact. Their faces had large noses that warmed frigid air before it hit their lungs. They were physically more powerful than modern humans in almost every measurable way. They hunted large animals at close range: mammoths, cave bears, bison. The injuries on their bones look like the injuries of rodeo riders, damage that comes from being dangerously close to very large, very angry animals. They weren't hunting from a safe distance. They were in the middle of it. They used fire. They made tools. They buried their dead. Some groups used pigments and may have made ornaments. Multiple studies have found evidence of them caring for injured group members, keeping alive individuals who would have died without help. That is not primitive behavior. That is recognizably human behavior. And for hundreds of thousands of years, this was enough. Then Homo sapiens moved into their world. And roughly 40,000 years ago, the physical evidence of living Neanderthals disappears. The old story was clean. We arrived. We were smarter. We won. They lost. The real story is messier. Neanderthals lived in small, scattered populations. Small groups are fragile in ways that large networks are not. A single bad winter. A disease moving through a group too small to absorb it. A birth rate slightly too low for slightly too long. These aren't dramatic endings. They're quiet ones. The kind where a group just slowly stops being able to replace itself. Ancient DNA shows that some late Neanderthal populations had very low genetic diversity. They may have already been in trouble before Homo sapiens became a serious factor. The climate was also shifting, cold phases, warmer phases, landscapes rearranging themselves faster than populations could adapt. Then add a new human species entering the same territory, one with wider social networks, one that could share information and resources across longer distances. One that was, perhaps, slightly more flexible in exactly the way that mattered most when everything around them kept changing. It probably wasn't one battle, it was 1,000 small losses, isolation, climate stress, competition, dwindling numbers. And then, at some point, there simply weren't enough of them left. Here's the part that complicates the story even further. We didn't just replace Neanderthals, we absorbed some of them. If you are of European or Asian descent, roughly 1 to 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. They didn't just disappear, part of them is still here, inside us, right now. Denisovans, the ones we know almost nothing about. Neanderthals at least left us bones, skulls, tools, burial sites, enough to build a picture. The Denisovans gave us almost nothing. Their story begins with a finger bone, a fragment so small found in a cave in Siberia that it barely looked like evidence of anything. But the DNA extracted from it told a completely different story. This bone did not belong to a Neanderthal. It did not belong to a modern human. It belonged to something else, a previously unknown human species, identified entirely from a fragment the size of your fingertip. That is how the Denisovans entered human history. Not with a dramatic discovery, with a piece of a finger. What we've assembled since is fragmentary but strange. They likely ranged across a huge swath of Asia, from Siberia down through the Tibetan Plateau and possibly into Southeast Asia. But their fossil record remains brutally thin, a finger bone, some teeth, a jaw fragment, a handful of other remains. And yet their genetic shadow is enormous. Modern populations in parts of Oceania and Asia carry Denisovan ancestry. The Tibetan people inherited a version of a gene that helps the body function at high altitude, a gene that came from Denisovan-related humans. A species that vanished tens of thousands of years ago may still be helping living people breathe on the roof of the world today. As a living population, the youngest Denisovan fossil evidence is around 40,000 years old. After that, they fade out entirely. Why? We genuinely don't know. Their range may have been wide, but their populations thin. They may have been absorbed into Homo sapiens groups in some places and simply outnumbered in others. Climate shifts may have fragmented their habitats. Because we have so few fossils, their extinction is one of the least understood chapters in the entire human story. The Denisovans are a reminder of something uncomfortable. A human species can vanish so completely that almost nothing is left. No cities, no monuments, no stories. Just fragments of bone and traces of code buried inside other people's DNA. Homo floresiensis, the strangest one. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, scientists found something that initially seemed impossible. A tiny human, standing roughly a meter tall. With a small brain and small body, living on an island populated by giant birds, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants, making tools, surviving. When the finds were first announced, the scientific community didn't know what to do with them. Were these diseased modern humans? An isolated population with some developmental condition? The debate was fierce, but the evidence kept pointing to the same conclusion. This was a separate human species, a small island human. And islands do strange things to evolution. Large animals shrink when food is limited, and there are no large predators to drive size up. Small animals grow when the usual competition disappears. The rules are different. And Homo floresiensis may be the most dramatic example of island evolution in the entire human family. Their fossils at the cave site date to between 100,000 and 60,000 years ago. Stone tools associated with them go as late as around 50,000 years ago. That date is haunting, because modern humans were moving through the region around exactly that time. And then Homo floresiensis was gone. Maybe the island's environment changed, maybe their prey declined, maybe a volcanic eruption destabilized the ecosystem. Maybe Homo sapiens arrived and added pressure to a population that had no room to absorb it. On a small island, you don't need a global catastrophe to erase a species. You need a chain of local problems, less water, less food, more competition, one bad stretch of generations. and an entire human species disappears. That is what makes Homo floresiensis so unsettling. They weren't competing for the whole planet. They were just trying to survive one island. And even that wasn't safe. So why did we survive? This is where the answer becomes dangerous if we make it too simple. The tempting version is we were smarter. We outthought everyone else and won. But Neanderthals were intelligent. Denisovans adapted to extreme environments that would challenge us today. Homo erectus survived longer than we have. Homo floresiensis survived conditions that would be genuinely difficult for modern humans. Intelligence alone doesn't explain it. The better answer might be connection. Homo sapiens appear to have been unusually good at building large social networks, not just family groups, not just small bands, wide webs of people, ideas, tools, and information that stretched across large distances. If one group failed, another could carry knowledge forward. If one region became harsh, people could move and be absorbed into other groups. If one technique worked, it could spread. That network may have been our real advantage, not the individual brain, the connections between brains. Other human species had culture. But Homo sapiens may have built culture that traveled farther, changed faster, and connected more people. And in an unstable world, that kind of flexibility absorbs shocks that isolated populations cannot survive. But even that isn't the complete answer. Luck mattered, geography mattered, population size mattered, timing mattered. We may have survived partly because we were adaptable, and partly because we happened to be in the right places with the right numbers at the right moments. The last branch. The other human species were not stepping stones to us. They were not practice runs. They were not unfinished versions of us. They had their own histories, their own cultures, their own ways of surviving a world that was trying to kill all of us equally. Homo erectus lasted over 1 million years and then didn't. Neanderthals survived ice ages that would end us and then didn't. Denisovans ranged across half a continent and left almost nothing but fragments. Homo floresiensis survived on an island full of monsters and then didn't. Today, when we say human, we mean only us. But that is only because every other meaning disappeared. We are not the peak of a ladder. We are the last branch of a tree that used to have many living branches. And maybe that should make us feel less certain about our permanence, not more. Because if the other humans teach us anything, it is this. Extinction doesn't only happen to the weak, it happens to the isolated, the unlucky, the ones living through changes too fast to adapt to, the ones whose networks weren't wide enough when everything started falling apart. We are one species on one planet, and every other human species that ever existed thought they had more time too.